Hello and welcome to Academica's Aqua Circular Conference. Our first guest for today is Mr. Shalp Verma. Mr. Verma, thank you for accepting our invitation. I want to know if you can hear us.
Yep.
Okay. Mr. Verma is a researcher for water energies food policies with the International Water Management Institute. He will talk about decentralized solution in the context of circular economy. I just want to remember you that the presentation will last about 15 to 20 minutes. After that, it will be questions answers sessions. Attendees can ask questions in writing on the chat menu or using the question button below the presentation screen. The questions can be addressed in English or Romanian. The answers will be provided in English, only in English. Mr. Shalp Verma, you may start the presentation. Thank you again.
Okay, thank you, Christina, and hello everyone. Good morning from India. I'm going to talk about three very specific examples of decentralized solutions. Well, two of them have been around for a while, and the third one is still evolving. So let's just get on with the topic. The examples I'm going to talk about, the first one is about wastewater reuse in agriculture. So that's mostly about completing the water cycle and the transactions between urban areas and their peripheries. The second is about the management of fecal sludge or solid waste, also between cities and their peripheries. And the third one is about the energy cycle, which is the one which is still evolving, and we hope that this will also go in the direction of circular economy thinking in the future. So the idea of sharing this is to say that some of these are already happening on the ground, even without a coherent policy framework. And if there is a better appreciation of what is happening on the ground in the policies, then a lot of the consequences of these can be multiplied and improved if that is done. So I'll start with the first example about wastewater reuse in agriculture. I think many of you know that most of Asia, and India is no exception, is very, very rapidly urbanizing. We have a huge population, but the urban population, and historically we were a rural country like most developing countries, but the urban population is rising very fast. We now have about 383 million people who live in urban areas. Now, all these urban centers generate huge amounts of wastewater. To be precise, this is a 2015 figure, so this would have gone up by now. About 61,700 million liters per day. And out of that, only about 37% is the wastewater for which we have capacity to treat. Actual wastewater that we treat is actually even less than that, because not all the capacity is fully utilized. Some of the wastewater treatment plants are not functioning to the full utilization level, which means that about 70% of the wastewater that our cities generate remains untreated and it's just released into the environment, mostly in streams and drains, which go downstream towards farmlands. Now, many farmers, our field studies, we have found that many farmers all over the country, it's not just a phenomena in one or two places, it's happening all over the country, use this wastewater for agriculture use. We did studies in 17 locations across the country, and we found more than 57,000 hectares which were being irrigated with wastewater. Now, there are favorable economics which actually drive this behavior. Farmers actually realize that if they use wastewater, this wastewater is laden with nutrients. So they have to spend much less on fertilizers, which they had to if they were using fresh water. they get better, higher yields. They also sometimes report that the quality of the produce is also improved because of the nutrient-rich nature of this wastewater. However, there is no coherent policy on whether farmers should be allowed to do this. There have been studies of similar things happening all over Europe. In fact, I read a old paper which talked about sewage farms just outside Paris, and people from all over Europe used to come and visit it because the produce that the sewage farm was producing, the vegetables and fruits that they were producing were of very high quality. So it's not something that is unique and only happening now, but the scale at which it is happening is quite large and probably unparalleled compared to what has happened in the past. There is some awareness among farmers on the health issues that could arise because of wastewater irrigation, but for the most part, farmers don't see it as a major issue, and that is the part which is a little bit tricky, where we need some coherent policy to make sure that this circular economy works in a way that maximizes the returns, but at the same time also minimizes any harmful impacts. The farmers prefer to use municipal wastewater. They don't want to use industrial wastewater because that has heavy metals. And so there is some sort of realization. And there are large number of business models and institutions that we have found which have cropped up on their own. And many of them basically throw up lessons for what the policy can mandate. So, in short, there is a wastewater irrigation economy that can convert a waste into a resource. Our problem is that we have so much wastewater generated, but we are not able to do anything with it. It's a headache for most municipalities, and farmers are using it as a resource. And actually, the process of using this wastewater in irrigation, if it is done well, it can itself be a treatment process, which is not very energy intensive, which is not very cost intensive. So farmlands can be converted into wetlands, which also will provide environmental benefits. So that's an opportunity which exists in the policy sphere. And how we treat our wastewater, or to what extent we treat our wastewater, is a function of how much households or municipalities are willing to pay for it. I will not go into the detail of this diagram, but basically it's talking about different degrees of wastewater treatment, which can come with different costs associated with it. The second example that I want to talk about is the treatment of fecal sludge. Again, like in the case of wastewater, most of the fecal sludge is basically illegally dumped, or it is emptied in unsafe manner. About 77% in the case of fecal sludge. Now, some of it or all of it can be properly reutilized if the circular economy thinking is applied to our policies. These tanks that you see, the yellow colored tanks, these are basically suction pumped tankers. All they do is they can suck out the fecal sludge, which is concentrated in the soak pits, and from there they are supposed to dump it in the sewage treatment plants. But the sewage treatment plants charge these tankers based on the volume that they are dumping, because they have to recover the cost of treatment. So many of them tend to discard this sludge illegally or improperly or in an unsafe manner. But one recent trend is that farmers have started asking them to dump their sludge in a pit in their fields. And what the farmers do with that is that they put it in that pit, and then they dry it, and they mix it with soil and some dung, and through that process of drying and composting, they make this biofertilizers. Now, some private or enterprising farmers and also some private businesses are trying to, perfect this business model. But unfortunately, they are competing with subsidized or donor-funded sewage treatment plants. So if the government subsidizes the creation of a sewage treatment plant, and they give all the capex and they also pay the opex, then obviously there's no incentive for these kind of businesses to emerge. What we need is for policy to take into account what is happening again through private initiative, and then incorporate that into the design of future smart cities and climate smart processes. The third example I want to talk about is about solar PV panels. Now, these are mushrooming all over the country, and I'm sure also in different parts of the world. And from the energy point of view, these are great. You are replacing dirty fossil fuels with clean renewable power. Uh, but the expansion of this in India is also very rapid. There is one projection which says that by 2050 we will have enough solar panels just in India that if we line them up, we can build a road up all the way up to moon. Now, all of these panels will at some stage need to be discarded. And the conventional way of recycling these panels is very, very energy intensive and cost intensive. And that model is unlikely to work in a country like India, especially when the users are poor farmers. Therefore, we need to find better ways of repurposing, recycling, or reusing these solar panels, even after maybe 10, 15 years of life that they do in their primary purpose. And there are already some examples which are popping up. The picture on the left shows a farmer who has just converted a discarded solar panel and made a door out of it. Now, this is a classic example of a circular thinking, right? So the panel must have generated some solar energy for the farmer for a few years. And when it stopped generating energy, then it was still reimagined and repurposed and converted it into a door, which is still basically giving some productive value to the owner. Similarly, there are scientists in Bangalore who are trying to see whether old discarded solar panels can become good building material and also basically reduce the construction cost, but also produce some solar energy, even if it is not the 100% solar energy that they were designed to build. And several other uses are coming up. So we need more of this if we want this economy to have a sustainable future. So in the end, these are some interim conclusions. I don't have any final conclusions. But basically, this whole idea of circular thinking or circularity is in our DNA. Almost everything that we find in households is reused or repurposed at some stage. Even grocery bags and cola bottles are reused. But scalable circular economy models are those which make environmental but also economic sense. So if they also save cost or they also increase income, then they become scalable and they scale very quickly. And there are lots of hidden circularities that remain undocumented, and they are therefore unable to inform policies and programs. And that's where I think research organizations like EMI are trying to contribute. Moving these practices from ad hoc to considered and from default to design can bring substantial returns. And there are some EMI projects which are already trying to do that. The picture on the right with those pallets that you see is from a EMI project in Ghana, where they're converting solid waste into these pellets, which can be used as energy sources and also as fertilizers. Thank you.
Okay, indeed, good advices. We really need to reuse more. And now we open the question answer session. If I want to tell you that now we have more than 50 people watching us, and I'm sure that the presentation is very interesting for water sector. The main participants work in that area. So we have the first questions. Stefania Balika, how much are the farmers paying for using wastewater and what that includes?
So most of the cost for farmers is the pumping cost. this wastewater is basically discarded by the municipalities, and it's allowed to flow downstream because the municipality just doesn't have the resources or the capacity to treat it and reuse it. So for them, it's a waste. So farmers get this wastewater for free, but the cost that they have to incur is the cost of pumping it, because usually it's in a stream and then they have to lift it from there and take it to their field. But there are also some additional costs because of the inherent nature of wastewater irrigation. For example, farmers have to buy gloves and long boots because if they come in contact with the wastewater, then they can have skin rashes and skin problems. So those are some minor costs, but on the whole, I think given that the wastewater is rich with nutrients, it's a very good deal for the farmers. Now, the problem that is happening is that even industries are realizing that this is the nutrient rich resource, and now there is slowly starting a conflict between farmers and industries, and industries are trying to say that they should get all the wastewater, whereas farmers want to keep using it as well.
Okay. We have another question. Mr. Ciprian Nano, does India or parts of its cities, states have a circular economy strategy?
We don't have a strategy at the national level. We don't have a coherent policy on this. But there are examples coming from different parts of the state of the country. Some cities have taken huge initiatives. I think Bangalore is one of the first which came up with a plan to reuse wastewater for multiple uses, for irrigation, but also to recharge groundwater, because groundwater depletion is a big problem in Bangalore. And some UN agencies helped the Bangalore municipality to do this in a more structured manner, and they've also come up with some new policies. But it's going to take some time before this can get mainstream to the entire country. It's still happening at a very small scale.
Okay, thank you again. And we have around 5 minutes left. Another questions, Mrs. Carmen Kirilash. What are the costs of separating municipal from industrial wastewater? I suppose that it means WW.
Yeah, actually, it's very difficult to separate the two. So we find that farmers only use wastewater which is sourced from areas where 95-96% of the water is coming from municipal sources. If you mix them, then it's very, very costly to separate them. So a better way going forward would be to make sure that we have a dual piping system. So if there are industrial units within city limits, in most cases those are being discarded. Most cities are already so polluted that they can't afford to have even more pollution from industries. So in many cases the courts have asked the industries to move out of city boundaries, but where they do exist, then industrial units are asked to have a in-house treatment effluent treatment plant, so that their wastewater doesn't mix with the municipal wastewater, and that will make it easier for the farmers to use it.
Okay, thank you. Another question, very interesting question. Mr. Ciprian Nano asks, what are the main Indian sectors starting pilot project in circular economy? Agriculture, construction, solid waste?
I don't know. I don't know have the entire list. The three examples that I presented are just the ones that I know. But I'm sure that there are people who know much more than me. I know that in construction there are huge investments in green buildings, and to the extent possible, they're trying to use. There are also now architects who are specializing in green architecture. But in agriculture, I think that is the biggest. There is the biggest scope to implement this, because in agriculture, the economies matter a lot. Most of our farmers are very poor. 98% of our farmers are smallholders. They have less than 1 hectare land and very little cash. So any option, if it helps them save costs, then they're very keen to take it up and run with it.
Okay, thank you again. Now we have around 7 minutes left. We will wait another 1 minute, and okay, I think there is no other questions for the moment. Mr. Shilp Verma, thank you again for your presence and for your presentation. Indeed, your knowledge is very valuable for Romanian water sector, and wish you success in all you are doing. And thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you too. Now we will stop this session, and after that we will start another one. See you then. Bye bye.